Sorry, that scared me. Noted. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Happy June 18th. So we're embarking on our third session of bargaining today, and what we wanted to do is we spent some time reviewing your proposal, and then we are doing our counter proposal for you, and we figured it wouldn't take a long time, but we wanted to kind of go through the pieces that maybe differences or expansions of ideas for what you shared, and then take any questions, and then we would have lunch kind of around 11:15, 11:30, probably caucus during that time, and then I know that we're ending today at 1:30, I believe. So that's kind of our schedule for today, so we'll come back sometime before the 1:30 time to kind of determine what our next steps are. So Elsie, you want to go ahead and pass out the key pieces? And I think one of the things that I want to say is that we appreciate the collaboration, we appreciate the conversation, and we're trying, as always, we're trying to think about how we can embed both of our proposals into the language that we're creating, and we're also, because of our budget constraints right now, we're really thinking about those pieces as well, and then the costs that we can do and things that we aren't able to do based on our budget constraints. And I think one of the things we always try to think about is like, what do we currently have within the contract that we can use as a thread to the needle and being able to move forward with the work that we need to do in regards to that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Audrea and then the rest of the team to kind of follow up and go through the two pieces.
Yeah. So again, thank you for the proposal that you guys gave back to us. We tried to, again, exactly what Connor's talking about, just think about what we could do and what would be feasible in the budgetary constraints, and then try to find mediums halfway, and also know that teacher-directed academic seminar, that's gone. There are things that are gone that we know that we were trying to work within the system. So we met as a team to just kind of figure out what was feasible, what we needed to add, what we needed to do to give more support. And then these folks are going to kind of share with each section where we kind of landed with some of the areas, and then we'll give an opportunity for questions. And I hope you will see we're trying to find some way to make this happen that is supportive, because I hear that, and wanting your members to have the support that they need to implement this effectively. So trying to find that balance. So I'm going to kick it over to each. I think the first one, family and student communication, I think we are all thumbs up on that section. So I don't think there's anything that we need to talk about there. And then I think for the course outcomes and listening sessions, we are also in agreement there. So just, I feel like those two we can skip past if that's okay. With workload, I'm going to kick that over to Becky.
Yeah. So in this proposal, in the number 1 summer workload for 25-26 and 26-27, we have written that the district will provide 4 optional half-day work sessions for unit members that need additional support with course outcome implementation paid at the non-teaching rate. We actually put out, because we've been collecting the names of piloting teachers on kind of a form, and so that last week of school, we sent out a form to all piloting teachers with some dates for some sessions. In the summer, we have added a couple dates to that as well, and we already have 22 educators signed up for that. And we felt that based on going through different feedback, tickets that we've had, as well as different kind of informal listening sessions or question sessions that have happened in the building, and then also based on the one that we had that last week of school, that we're feeling it'd be really necessary for that to be a more structured time based on the types of questions and support teachers are asking for, to have people who, for instance, are like experts in the gradebook aspect, to be able to sit with educators, to be able to work side by side with them. The second one, number 2.
Becky, before we move on, so I want to make sure that I heard that correctly. So 22 educators have signed up for what specifically?
For half-day summer work sessions.
Half-day.
And they can come to one, they could come to two, they could come to all.
In these work sessions, you mentioned one thing that's gonna be covered is the grade book.
That will, because we sent it out to the piloting teachers, because that's kind of what we know as the group that wants to move forward with trying this next year. It would be gradebook emphasis would be heavy, but of course we'd have a support team there to answer any other questions as well.
I don't wanna split hairs here, but, you're already rolling out like aspects of your proposal, right? And we're working on an MOU, right? So I think, I think that merits like further conversation. I don't know what the format of like those half days like are they like more like presentations? Are they kind of free flow, like work sessions for the educate? So I think that this merits like more information about those days.
So we have a group of teachers that are piloting, which nobody's has to pilot, which we agree on, I think, in one of our other bullet points. So those half-day sessions, originally we were looking at maybe less, because again, we were planning for pilots, so we want to support. So this is talking about the 25, 26 pilot group. However, those could be available for other members as well that just want to come and gain more information as we move forward. But the piloting teachers do need to have support because they've chosen to pilot. So sessions are structured around the grade book and those pieces, and then opportunities to just have some work time and understand a couple of other aspects of course outcomes and how they're looking in the grade book. So I feel like we can't not support the piloting teachers this summer. That would, because they've chosen to pilot. And then we would continue that for the following school year with all of the teachers as well. So you would have a group of teachers that piloted and chose to do so. And then we would, again, continue to support them. I would see it as a structured time with work time is kind of, I think, how they have set it up so that they can ask questions. I think that's what we're seeing from all of the sessions that the principals held, the session that we had last week, the things that are just coming up informally. We want to make sure we have people there to answer questions. And I think that's where it is having them a little bit more like structured and support in those places and spaces. I don't see it as us standing there for 4 hours presenting something. That is not what we are looking to do. It is really truly a time in which we can give some context, and then you can, I call it playing in the sandbox and starting to figure out how this works, especially for the piloting group. For this summer. Next summer may need to look a little bit different because potentially, depending on where all of this lands, and how we would support all of our high school teachers, knowing that the pilot teachers would also have kind of an advantage in that situation because they will have gotten more like they'll have gotten to play in the sandbox longer.
Yeah, we described it as drop-in work time.
So I just want to make it clear, like a couple of things can be true here simultaneously. Number one, I think that I agree with much of what you said, Audrey. Those piloting educators do need support. But the other thing that can also simultaneously be true is that we're in the midst of bargaining something and you all are making decisions. I think that would be called like unilateral implementation, like while we're bargaining, right? So I would have felt better had you all discussed that, like with us, right? While we're bargaining, because that's, I don't know at this point, what, if you have already implemented something, like what room is there to continue to bargain on that?
I guess would we not offer support to the piloting teachers then? Is that what you're asking?
So again, two things can be true simultaneously,
Okay,
right? Like
sorry,
offering support, right, I think is important, but we're exchanging proposals about summer work, right? So by implementing this, like kind of unilaterally, I'm wondering what room there is to continue bargaining on that item, right? So I guess I'll phrase that as a question. Is there room to continue bargaining on that issue?
Yes, I would say yes, because I think we're also, maybe to answer that too, that two things can be true. We do need to support our piloting teachers who have.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, and I think part of this is also looking at ways in which we support all of the members moving forward. So I think, and if this is not what you feel is adequate enough to support all of the members, then I would hope in your counter proposal, you would say, nope, we need X, Y, and Z in order for, or if you want to distinguish, we can also talk about that, distinguishing between people who have chosen to pilot versus those who will not necessarily be piloting in the same way. Does that make sense? So maybe that's I don't feel like I can in good conscience, we can go in and not support those that have said, yeah, I'll try it out this year. But I also understand what you're saying from the bargaining standpoint, but I don't think that, I don't think this is an unable to bargain concept. Like, tell us if there's something different we should be offering for our piloting teachers, and then thinking about the group as a whole, that's fine too. Tell us, that's a great thing to give us in a counter proposal. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're trying to be responsive, and I'm going back to what you kind of had some questions on from the last time that we met, just about how much time would be available and the number of teachers that are currently piloting, and so there was question about that. And so I think one of the things that I hear from Audria, based on your question, is the responsiveness that we have as a district. And we have always, sometimes been working on things, but then also bargaining sometimes the things that we need to do as well, because we need to be responsive to the needs of the staff that are interested in the pilot of this work.
Yeah, I think we might need to continue talking about this, but thank you, Audrey, for answering that question. I think what I'm hearing is that this is still an item that is open to bargaining.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
Also agreed, we didn't put this in there, but we're happy to do that those optional half-day sessions. I don't know if it, specific to outside of the workday, if you wanted that in there too, we did put that specifically outside of the 191 days, which is what I think you had in your original proposal too. We can halfway got that.
Okay.
Will the work sessions that are this summer only be available to piloting teachers, or will other teachers have the opportunity for that time?
I think they could be open to other teachers. The wondering would be, though, based on the structure that we have here, I think we would want to get a little more feedback of what those teachers would need. Because I think what we're seeing is that for the group of teachers piloting next year, we have a clear understanding of what they need in regards to be able to be supported. So if you're not piloting, is it, what is that specific support?
And that might be something in a counter proposal though, where we delineate between piloting and just informational. And that might be something we need to send on back our
I'd
way.
like to ask one more question. I know in a previous session, you mentioned, I believe, 295 courses already finished their course outcomes, and they were, I believe, in synergy, ready to go for next year. Do you know how many courses do not have their course outcomes completed yet?
I think it was 10. And it's within the range of 8 to 12, I should say. I don't want to be quoted exactly on 10, but we were down to just a very small handful.
Including electives and everything?
Everything.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So going into section 2, time during the school year, there is some similarities here and then some adjustments. So going through those bullet points, this additional time can be allocated by providing sub days for the 25-26 school year and the 26-27 school year. I believe this is a continuation of dedicating at least 4 admin-directed academic seminars per year from the pilot and implementation year of 26-27. We also wanted to call out here, we added professional development allotted during those October and November professional development days. So we have that full day in October now. And then that professional development day that's generally during that Thanksgiving week in November, time allocated during those times in both the 25-26 school year and the 26-27 school year. And then the current 12 hours of time to perform tasks such as student assessments, collaboration, integration of new standards and curriculum will be expanded to allow for course outcome work as well.
So my question here is this identical to what we proposed with the addition of the third bullet point?
I believe we added the qualifier to that first bullet, in context to the 25-26 school year and the 26-27 school year.
Okay.
But I think the second bullet is the same. We added that third bullet. And then the fourth bullet is the same as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Who am I taking it to? Sorry.
I think.
I realized-
I'm
Sorry.
Did you want to transition?
I did not do a seamless transition at this point in time.
I'm sorry, I was looking and like doing the cross reference. I'm gonna kick it
Transition
over.
happened.
There we go. We're gonna kick it to David now.
I'm gonna pick it up with the timeline. The first and second bullet points are the 25, 26, I believe are the same language, moving forward. The third bullet point, and you will see the third bullet point referenced in the following two, time years, 26, 27, 27, 28. Educators will have optional time to give input on the revision of potential course outcome language and preparation for the following school year, 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29. That revision of the course outcomes needs to happen in the spring, because once you implement piloting teachers or whoever's using the course outcomes, it can't change the middle of the reading period because that's a systemic shift. So the course outcomes would need to be revised in the spring to go in effect for the following school year. And that would happen repeated year to year to year to year. Any questions?
Yes, so under 25, 26, that's not identical. So,
What do we change in that?
From our original proposal, we have added the third
The
bullet.
third bullet is the new point.
I think you had that maybe in a separate,
That third is the new one. I don't really know the changes we saw.
okay,
yeah, the
So,
third,
yeah.
we wanted to acknowledge that course outcomes, getting some feedback on them each spring is a good idea that you guys had proposed. And then also, the flip side is we don't want to do a complete overhaul of the course outcomes. We really do want to, take them and look at them, but also be able to give educators opportunities to give feedback to prepare for the following year. So each year in the spring, doing some sort of input and feedback component so that we can see what are course outcomes that might need some adjustments or shifts. What are some course outcomes that are like, these actually feel really good, let's continue those. And then, again, each spring doing that, but I can't remember if yours had summer or we wanted to make sure we need to do it in the spring in order to prepare for the following school year.
so just, I just want to, say out loud that, our own, HEA members have had a significant, impact on me on how bargaining is done. I would say that I'm used to what you guys are doing here, which is just present your proposals, but the way that we bargain in the full bargain is we take each other's language and if we propose something, it'll appear in your document as struck through, right?
We usually only do current contract language in regular bargaining and either strike. We don't continue to add each other's proposals if we're not picking them up board.
Yeah, because this is brand new language for an MOA, which is different than when we're bargaining for the contract.
So you all,
I think we do it backwards.
maybe I have to revise my thinking of that because I'm bargaining in a different role.
You know, other places do it differently.
Okay, so under 25, 26, bullet points number 1 and 2 are identical to the previous proposal. And bullet point number 3 is new. Under 26, 27, let's see, first 3 bullet points are identical to your previous proposal and bullet point number 4 is new. Okay. And then 27, 28, all of it is new.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm gonna have to do a sanity check on that bargaining process.
We went back and forth in the beginning and our proposals only had our proposals.
So we changed
Versus
it
contract
as we went.
language.
Okay.
No, that's how we always did it in the beginning. I think you had done it a little differently on your proposals.
Yeah.
But ours were always based on current contract language. They did not include anything that was not currently in the contract that you had proposed as stricken or added, right?
We don't have to unpack all of that right now, but yes, let's,
Yeah, I think
I
that's
see,
what,
I see what you guys are doing, so.
we've also had to kind of put it side by side too, Luzon, because it's like, okay, where, what is HEA proposal and what is, what we're proposing, and trying to also embed some of the language that you're putting in with the language that we have, and I think that's why we created that 3-year timeline, so we can distinguish kind of the things that we want to hit on for the 3 years, and then that last bullet is threaded through all 3 of the school years, because we think it's important to get feedback and adjust things.
Thank you for the trip down memory lane.
Certainly.
Can I ask a question? What are you envisioning will be the optional time? Like educators will have optional time to give input on the revision of potential course outcomes language in preparation for, and then it is for each school year. I was just wondering what your idea of when that optional time is going to occur, what the structure will be, if you had any vision for that yet.
I mean, I think I can, when we've done situations like this on like scope and sequence docs and stuff like that, like, of course, we haven't done this necessarily for course outcomes as we are working in our first iteration of those, but I think the time period, opportune time period would be kind of post-spring break, like kind of that April to like mid-May window is kind of a good time, because we also then want to leave time for us to be able to have all the docs and make sure that by the end of the school year, we know what our final version is for the next year. So we kind of look at like a 6-week time period post-spring break. I think the part optional there is that like we would send out some sort of like feedback or survey or something like that to, like, let's say it's all language arts 9 teachers, that we say, here are your course outcomes for this year. Please meet in your PLCs. If you would like to provide any feedback for that, this is a way that you could provide that. And then likely we would take representatives from school, like from each school, to be able to then come together to look at any need for changes. I think what necessitates the need to come together is going to really be the amount of feedback we get, right? So I think you were part of the data science group, right?
Yes.
So if you think of that process of like where you kind of got feedback, Holly brought the team back together. That was 1 teacher per building, so that was really easy way. You didn't have to like consult with a lot of people. Came together, made adjustments as it is, and then we do the upload for synergy. So if you think back to that process, it would be very similar on an annual basis. And if there's no feedback, there's no need to meet, right? If people are like, we implemented this fine, we feel very good about this, or it's just a simple language tweak of and or instead of and, right? Those are things that I don't think would necessitate necessarily bringing a whole team together for like a half day or full day or something like that.
Okay. So you're imagining, depending on the feedback, possibly a half day or a full day per course?
It would,
Depending on the
what we've done this year for building the course outcomes, which I think works well because inevitably the high school level, it's rare that you have somebody who only teaches a single course, right? So like you might have someone who teaches language arts 9 and language arts 11. So what we kind of did is we huddled together the content, and then we kind of had like, if you're language arts 9, go to that corner. If you're language arts 10, go to that corner. And then people have then the ability to kind of flex between the groups too and give like feedback. And then that also provides the opportunity to bring it back to your building for kind of that cycle of feedback as well.
Okay. So a half day or a full day per department is
Correct.
Okay.
And in revision of potential course outcomes language, is that specifically referring to our course outcomes statements and not necessarily like the rubric language or the grading scales or any of that, just the course outcome statements?
Correct.
Kayla, we'll talk about the grading scale language when we get to the next major.
Other questions on the timeline for Mark?
Personally, I will have more questions, so maybe we'll go to caucus and maybe just come back with like some questions.
Grading rubric language and imbalance, we have 2 sections there, basically sentences. The first one, the district will provide clarity on the rubric language that will support evaluating students' proficiency level based on established performance criteria. We will provide clarity on, really it's the language between approaching and basic, or approaching and then the substitution of basic. Like last time, we want to have conversation around clarity around that language to clarify that part of the rubric. And we also need to make sure that we're thinking about the language as it maybe ties to, like NAEP, for example, some nationalized norm examples that we can pull into the conversation. We know that we have, because we hear from different educators, really three camps of people. We have a camp of people that really want to look at that approaching number 2. We have a camp of people that like the approaching language and how it is written. And then we have a third camp of people who are already starting to map and start to backwards map their course sequences and mapping it to the current language. And so what we want to do is have a thoughtful process. I don't know what that looks like, because I know that's going to be a question. But we need to provide clarity, and we want to provide clarity as we move into the fall. That's the first sentence. Second one.
Are you saying that there are 3 camps of people, so folks that
Want to change.
that want to change approaching?
Correct.
That like approaching, that are already mapping?
Exactly.
approaching. Okay.
And then we have a group of people that want to just change the language and to think about the level of rigor, and that's that basic language that we talked about last time. Changing approaching and substituting the word basic in there, or replacing is a better word than substituting, and replacing that language. And we want to provide clarity and go through that discourse. So we are agreeing to that. And the next sentence, or a couple sentences, educators will give students an adequate number of attempts per course outcomes. 3 or more allows for a sufficiency of evidence, and students can retake, redo, or retest to assess proficiency, which can be considered an attempt. These are both true. They both coexist. They coexist together. They can exchange, and depending upon individual teacher practice, PLC decisions or content, that retake, redo, retest can be part of the 3 attempts. It can be 3 separate attempts. So both of those sentences are true and coexist together. Questions?
David, do you see that as like a requirement?
I see it as an opportunity more than a requirement.
So is that educator discretion?
I think teachers can choose to retake. I think teachers can choose to provide 3 distinct opportunities. I think educators can choose to redo an assignment with a different sort of prompt. I see that you can also, educators can choose to retest with the same assessment if they so choose, or they can assess differently in a 3rd or 4th attempt. So it can be it's exchangeable. They all can coexist in the same course.
If a student shows proficiency on a first assessment and it's a reflection of that whole course outcome, let's say, is it going to be required of teachers then to have 2 other things in the grade book for that student?
I think the question is this question. If a student shows proficiency on the first assessment that we're giving, or the first opportunity, then I as a teacher are going to want to provide different opportunities to ensure they're proficient, maybe extend that learning, maybe instead of analyzing, I'm summarizing. Instead of doing this level of math problem, I might extend that in the future. So is it required? I think that would be teacher discretion, but I'm going to want to get enough evidence in the grade book to prove that the student is proficient.
Great. And I think the last one, we are in agreement with member feedback and modifications. If I am correct.
Under grading rubric language and imbalance, the district will provide clarity on the grading rubric, and you mentioned the 2 approaching and the 2 basic kind of being maybe a spot of confusion or contention. So does that mean that we are going to be revising the language that's in the rubric? Because it kind of sounded like you hinted at maybe, but nothing in the statement really says that that there will be revisions. It's just clarity.
I don't have a good answer to that yet because I don't know the answer to that question. I think we need to provide a process to look at that language. And yes, there could be revision to that language. Or yes, it could stay the same. But I know that the district is willing to open up that conversation to look at the language to see if it is the best language.
I think one of the things from your feedback that you guys shared with us, and then also what we're hearing from, again, like David has described it, we do have a group of people who feel very comfortable with the approaching language and like that language. We do have a group of people that do not like that language and would prefer basic. And I think one of the things that Becky and David have talked about is how can we utilize something like NAEP that does also have a rubric, and would that help us anchor to something a little more solid? So looking at that too. I think what we are trying to do is, I think we've talked about this before, if we bring 100 people in a room, not everybody's gonna love the idea. So we're trying to find what's the best possible solution for this to try to meet the needs of the feedback that you're getting, feedback that we're getting from other educators too as well. I mean, that come to us from different, from our principals and schools, and then also trying to build something that people can feel comfortable with. So I think David's correct, and the answer is it could be revised or it may not be, and we're trying to find what's the best possible answer to accommodate and support everybody in moving forward, so.
And with that, I don't want to lose a thought that was raised during the listening session around the level of rigor, because that question that you're posing really is around the level of rigor. So the language is what's going to drive how we define the expectation of the students. The last part of that sentence is important. Will support evaluating students' proficiency level. So as we provide clarity, we also need to make sure that we're thinking about how do we give the right tool and implement the right tool so educators can evaluate that student's proficiency level. So there's that side of the equation as well.
Can I ask what NAEP is?
NAEP is the
Okay.
National Assessment of Education
I don't think it's proficient.
No, I think it's progress.
Progress.
I think
Yeah,
progress.
if you ever hear like it's the nation's report card, it's from the National Assessment Governing Body. It's like when every October you hear that like 8th graders are reading at like below grade level in 36 states or something like that, right? So if you ever hear those news reports, those are from the NAEP assessment. We, as a district, we always have schools every single year that are voluntold to take the NAEP assessment. It is, high schools I don't think it goes to high school, right? Yeah. So that's why you probably have never seen it as a high school educator. It's our middle schools and our elementary schools that participate in the NAEP assessment.
Is it related to SBAC or do they rename it SBAC?
No, it's separate from.
It's a whole,
It's its
because
own.
so what this is not state individual. This is a national, so if like our
National
8th graders at Brown Middle School take it, it's the same assessment that 8th graders in Mississippi, in Arkansas, in Arizona, and Alaska, everywhere are taking.
Did you say middle schools and elementary schools?
Correct.
And the reason that it's a valid tool is because it's normed. It's been normed across the system, across all systems. And so education as a system has a standard rubric that fits, that's been being utilized. So if we can look at these standardized rubrics that are there, that have been normed, it'll help guide language looking at supporting students and teachers to see how they're doing in terms of attaining proficiency.
What is the process that you envision on getting those potential revisions done in terms of like timeline, how you plan to gather feedback on those potential revisions? Would that happen before the summer work sessions or outside of those summer work sessions?
I think it would happen outside those summer work sessions. I think the work sessions are specifically going to be tied to implementation in the classroom for those piloting teachers and other interested educators. I think this would be a separate entity that would include teacher voice, that would include building admin voice. It'd be looking at a group of people looking at these examples of what rubrics could look like. And I think that would go into the beginning of the fall. But I don't think we could do it over the summer because getting a nice representation is gonna be really hard. Because we want teacher voice part of that.
So there will be no revision of the 0 through 4 going into, the 0 through 4 language going into next school year.
No, I think it.
I think there
Yeah.
could be, I just don't know what that.
I think we have to be really considerate of timelines, knowing that we have teachers who are piloting next year and who have agreed to pilot, are excited to pilot. And so I just don't want to get into a position where they come to a training, learn a certain rubric and language, and then we tell them during in-service week, guess what, we changed it. So I just want to be really considerate of consistency in that process.
Yeah, you want to be careful not to, we don't want to be careful, or we want to be careful not to change things in the middle of a grading period. So semester would be fine, at the end of the year would be fine. But in the middle, once you start grading, you want to allow the teacher to have that professional judgment to continue the grading cycle. Because if we interrupt that and shift, that's a lot of thinking that needs to go into that work.
Peggy, what were the dates set for those 4 optional half-day work sessions?
The one we initially sent out August 21st and 22nd, and then we added August 13th and August 14th.
13th and 14th?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions? What we could do is caucus and then see if there's any remaining questions. If there aren't, we can consider, counter proposals. So why don't we, I don't want to jump ahead. Are there any other questions? Okay. Why don't we caucus for now, and you were saying that lunch is on its way, or?
Lunch is here.
Lunch is here, so why don't we just break for lunch and we can.
Yeah, if
and
you
we
want to
can review this
text
stuff.
and just, let us know.
I have this invite going, you said 1:30, and then I have this invite till 1. Can I just
Oh.
clarify that we're going till 1 or 1? Did you have?
Oh, it's 1
okay.
o'clock,
Okay,
sorry,
thank you.
I might
Thank
have
you.
missed that.
Because I have 1 o'clock. I'm like going,
Well, you just got a half an hour back.
or half an hour somewhere else.
So, yeah, so if we have lunch until maybe, and break until maybe noon, and then just kind of touch base at noon, would that be kind of see where, if there are any questions, or do you
Why
want
don't
to
we
get back?
check in about half an hour, 10 till, and maybe
Okay.
shoot for reconvening at noon, because, we're on limited time.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I braced myself then.
I thought it was quieter.
Oh, maybe when I have 2, it's different, I don't know.
Or it could be the one.
Are you ready for me to put
Yes,
yours up there?
yes. So folks, we don't have anything to print out for you just for the sake of time. We figured we'd just project it and maybe we'll save some paper as well. So this is our counter. I do want to just start off by, thanking you all for, engaging in this work in a real way. What we have here represents our best thinking. We want to, we want to work with the district to land on something, and I know that we don't have forever to do that. So we've made some compromises, some concessions, but we do have some things that I think we still need to talk about. And some of it actually, I think, is logistics. We're trying to think about how this could happen, and so what we'll talk about here is some of the language we have accepted, some of the district's language we've accepted, some of our language we have kept, and some of it is strictly due to thinking through how this would happen. So let's,
Kelsey, could you do that to the page, please?
Yeah.
You want it 125?
Let's try it at 1. Was that helpful? Okay.
I can't get the full, oh yeah. I can.
Never got it.
Okay, so let's scroll down to workload. Okay, so what you see here is we have counter proposed. I mean, we started off with a pretty, like a higher number. And we're down to 4 days. The district proposed half days, and we appreciate that. We do think in order for our educators to have sufficient time, we're proposing full days. And what we're saying here, the intent here is for, if those half days are utilized by educators, like if I'm an educator who opts into like that first half day, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I need a lot more time for this, I'm gonna just continue working, right, for a full day. Those educators have the option to make those full, like those half days into full days, so that they can actually continue and complete the work that they're trying to complete. So we're trying to work within the framework of what you guys have done. Any questions about that? Okay, so let's scroll down to time during the year. We still have our language on here each year leading up to and including full implementation, and we'll explain more about that. This kind of leads into, I think, some logistical realities that I think we're bumping up into. So let's scroll down. We've accepted the district's language here, except we've struck or. I think that that's just more clear. We want to make sure that they get both of those days. Under 25-26, we've added 2 bullet points here at the top.
Can I back up to
Yes.
the days?
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to ask a clarifying question. I just want to make sure we're on the same, otherwise we'll change our gunner. Our plan is not to allot the entire day, but that a portion of it would be dedicated to course outcomes. In your brain, were you thinking entire day? And I want to make sure, then, okay, that is something we need to clarify, okay.
Yeah, we thought that that's what your proposal was, but if you clarified that when you presented it, that just didn't pick up on
No,
that.
that's, and I'm sorry, that might have been us not clarifying, so I don't want to make, nope, that, thanks.
Okay.
Can I ask another follow-up?
Yep.
In your proposal, are those full work days? Or is there some professional development delivered as well?
I think honestly, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the time for educators to do this work is what's missing, and we're trying to find every way that we can add in more time for us to do the work. And if that includes professional development around why the work is important, I think that those 2 things can go together, but the majority of the time, I think we all agree, needs to be us having the time to do the work. That still needs to be done.
And our intent also here is for it to be optional, right? If somebody doesn't think that they need that time, right? I mean, this is going to be, for example, not everybody is going to be doing course outcomes piloting in 25-26, so then they might not need both those days. So all of this is based on the educator's option. So, but I can see here that maybe we have some unpacking or like clarifying to do on this topic.
And then find is professional development, what we've done, or in terms of past practice, is what I'm also processing.
Okay,
So
we're open to continuing to discuss this. Yeah. Okay.
It's good to clarify these things.
Okay, so under 25-26, we've added 2 bullet points here. So what we want to see is educators shall have the choice between 2 agreed upon rubric language descriptors, right? I think in our ideal sense, members should have the option to kind of like work through their desired rubric language, but realistically, we might want to limit it. I'd love to see more than 2, but this I think is an example of us just trying to figure out how are we going to reach an agreement here, folks, right? So let's think about just 2, and if we scroll all the way to the bottom, Kelsey, that is the all the way to the bottom of the document. That's table 1. That's kind of what we mapped out as the second option. I know that the district brought up the other national, Navy, but, I mean, we have not had the opportunity to like review that in house. Okay. Any questions about that?
And the other option would be the current thing.
So the second bullet point here is that piloting educators shall have the choice between two agreed upon grade aggregation methods. So the aggregation method really is a point of contention for our members. I think this is something that we would like to see be like flexible going into this pilot year, right? And that really gives us some opportunities to figure out like what are two grade aggregation methods that can be compared, right? So that full implementation ultimately can be done on an aggregation methodology that actually works for our members and their classes. So, you guys have anything else?
I think that one of our thoughts about 25-26 is to make it a really meaty pilot year. Like if we have two options of rubric language, then when we get to the end of the year, we can, like David, I believe was saying earlier, we can see what worked and what didn't in both and come to the best possible solution. If we're comparing a couple different grade aggregation methods, again, we can compare and see what worked and what didn't, what were the unexpected pitfalls, what were maybe the unexpected benefits of each method, and then come to a more informed decision as a district.
Can I clarify, is your two aggregation method the mean and then the growth over time? Is that what
Those were
you're?
like the two most common.
We
Didn't really talk about
we didn't like land on a proposed one. What we're saying is that I don't think that this is our final solution here. But we're going to come back to you with another aggregation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think the third bullet point is something previously proposed. And then I can't count the next one the next blue bullet point that starts with educators will have optional time. This is based on district language, but we've added a little bit. So it just says educators will have optional time to give input on the revision of potential course outcomes language, grading rubrics language, and aggregation methods in preparation for the 26-27 school year.
My last question, with being kind of what you're describing, Robin, is a more meaty pilot year, it's a little bit more robust. With that happening, then with decisions to get us to more consistency happening after or continuing, I want to make sure that maybe then do we land somewhere? Like we would land at that point, given the two options, like let's say we did mean and growth over time as our aggregation, just hypothetically in the semester.
Sure.
And we worked through those, we figured out the pros and the cons, the whatever's input gathered. Would we land with one of those after that input? I just want,
I think that would be a reasonable goal.
okay, reasonable.
And with a whole year of information from the pilot, it seems like you would be able to make a much more informed decision.
Okay.
Based on what we could.
Yeah, no, I think full implementation, I think will ultimately require narrowing down the options, right? But we do want, opportunities for our members to actually implement like a couple of different options on each of those so that like we can go in confidently knowing like what is the one that actually works for our members, right? So this final bullet point, the district and association will continue to collaborate across schools to finalize course outcomes and come to department-wide agreements across HSD on grade aggregation methods. This was bumped up from 26. This was located under 26-27 previously. This kind of gets to the logistical aspects of our proposal in regards to the timeline, right? So I think in this pilot year, if there are a couple of different options with like the grading rubric language and the that grade aggregation, like that methodology, I think 26-27 cannot be a full implementation logistically. And maybe we're saying things differently, right? The work that is required, and I'll introduce this, but I'm gonna count on you guys to supplement here. The work that is required once a grading rubric language is finalized and the grade aggregation method is finalized, a lot of work that needs to happen, right, to finalize like the overall course outcome scale. And I might be using the wrong language here, but ultimately there's a lot of work that needs to take place after those things are finalized. So this is where you guys are going.
So if you scroll down just a little bit in the 2026-27, one of the things that we really feel that is important is that we have time to create district-wide course outcome rubrics. Because without those, we don't feel like we can do the other pieces. So that's where this we don't know that we can do a full implementation in 26-27 if we don't have all of the pieces in place. And right now we don't have those common rubrics. And it's really important if we're doing this for equity and for consistency that those rubrics are in place across the district, not in one PLC and one high school, because then we won't be reaching that goal of equity and consistency across the district, which is one of the major goals of all of this work.
And just to build off of what Sarah said, we really feel like those common rubrics are essential to make sure that we are grading in the same way across our buildings. For example, how do I know that the problem that I consider to be a 2 level on my math test is the same that my colleague in Glencoe or Liberty or Century considers it to? We really want to have time to have those discussions with our colleagues across the district so that we can have those common rubrics and know that when I'm writing down 2 for my student's grade, it's going to be the same 2 that students at Century, Liberty, Glencoe, HOA, and Oak Street are getting as well.
Because while we do have, even once we create rubrics for each course outcome, it's still going to require some tweaking in terms of what bullet points we need to see on those rubrics within different assessments in that course outcome, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you hit a course outcome 3 times, but in 3 different units, let's say, then you're gonna have different look-fors in those rubrics because you're covering different content under that same concept. And so I think it just requires a decent amount of work time to get all those nitty-gritty details kind of hammered out.
That's a clarifying question. I think I'm with you. I'm talking about rubrics based upon the individual assignment or the course outcome and the indicators within the course outcome.
Well, I guess I don't know exactly how the rubrics are supposed to even look because I haven't made one yet that go with the course outcomes, but I'm guessing you kind of have one for the course outcome, or kind of what you're looking for. But then how that score of a 4 or 3 or 2 or a 1 shows up in each particular assignment might be slightly different because the assessment
I
is
understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you guys. So if we scroll down to 27, 28, we've accepted the district language there. Grading rubric language and grade scale, we've accepted most of the district's language. In the second paragraph, we have made some modifications. So I think we are close in intent, but we thought that this language was a little bit more clear. So educators will have the option to give students an adequate number of attempts per outcome that allows evidence of proficiency. Students can retake, redo, or retest to assess proficiency, which can be considered an attempt. And that is our proposal.
accepted.
That statement, educators will have the option, excuse me. Educators will have the option to give students an adequate number of attempts per course outcome that allows for evidence of proficiency. So what's the other option? If there's the option to do this, what's the alternative?
I think this might be imperfect language, I'll admit. Limited time. But the intent here is to give educators the option over like over this paragraph, right? So one of the things that that might occur, right, is that if students can retake, redo, or retest to assess proficiency, whose choice is it, right? What happens like so one of the issues that this brings up is like who's determining like how to get those like attempts, right, or the evidence of proficiency, who's determining that, right? I think in our conversations, what like, you know, I appreciate what David has said about this. There's a lot of like freedom for educators to kind of choose like how to get those like those data points. So we're trying to make sure that this is under an educator option. So open to hearing like more like if you guys have a clearer way of like of saying that, we're open to hearing a counter on that. But the point is to make it an educator option. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Just, can you reiterate one more time what the option is? What is it we want to, what, from your perspective, what is it we want to give teachers the option to do?
Well, so to be more clear, so that what this originally read was educators will give students an adequate number of attempts per course outcome, 3 or more, so on and so forth, right? So that could be 3, could be 4, could be 5. Who decides, right? So the option should be the educator who's determining how to get students proficient, right? So an educator, I mean, under traditional, one scenario for educators is that they determine how to evaluate a student for proficiency, right? So we want to retain that educator choice, right? How many times does one like data point need to be evaluated? Like it's not meaningful to do that 5 times for no reason, right? So an educator, if an educator determines that it's 3, then it's 3, right? If they want to continue to evaluate that data point for them in order to actually evaluate a student, then it'll be more, right? If it's 2, then there's a reason for that, right? For the educator. So
I think like one example of why I think people don't want to necessarily be boxed into 3 being the magic number is that the way, for example, that we wrote our course outcomes for Algebra 1, the first semester hits each course outcome theme nicely multiple times. The way that we ended up having to group our standards for the semester 2 work, traditionally right now, is more based on like the last 2 units. And within that unit, taking something that we traditionally would only assess summatively once and then allow retakes when necessary, to then laying on top this requirement that we do it 3 times for every kid is where I think some people are having some big workload issues. Now, could we potentially get to a place where we're reframing sort of what that summative is? I think yes, I think that's like a transformative shift that like is gonna take people some time to get used to. Because what I keep hearing is that, you know, you can take some of these smaller formatives and kind of consider them as your data points. However, we're still expecting educators to input those results as if they were a summative. which means if they do hit multiple things, you're having to put scores in for those multiple things and use multiple rubrics potentially to grade those things. And so maybe just having a little bit more flexibility that doesn't lock us into this 3, I think,
Or 3 or more, right?
3 or more.
Clarifying question, in that sentence, if we were to take out, or if you were to take out the phrase, will have the option to. So the sentence reads, educators will give students an adequate number
Yeah.
of attempts. I'm just trying to clarify that language of option.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, okay.
I think,
I'm trying to get the definition of how we're using the word option there. Okay. Thanks, that helps.
Sure. Yeah, I would have to see ultimately what you're like talking about in a full sentence, but yeah, that's.
Well, I was just trying to take what Kayla was saying and say, what does that word mean based upon that definition with that phrase? So,
So that's the end of our proposal. Are there any more questions? So it's not lost on me that it's 1 o'clock and we haven't completely reached an agreement. So are there opportunities like next week to have like a follow-up? What do we?
I have very limited time next week, but we're doing another hire for a middle school position, assistant principal, and we're going through some evaluations and things like that. So
Becky goes on vacation as well, so.
For the rest of the summer or?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Okay.
Granted, yeah.
Because you said so, no, I'm out until, June 30th, which then I think Audrey picks up, and then
And then I go out.
I know you all had talked about maybe there weren't dates that were available in July, but we could, I mean, the other piece that we could do is try to find the next available date. Probably after the 4th July,
I mean, that's a good question.
I'm just wondering if we're like within such closeness that 30 more minutes today would get us over that.
I don't.
David,
Okay,
both that,
all
I
right.
know.
I'm just trying to like,
I know, I understand what,
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to come back.
I think it's more than 30 minutes, because I think we'd want to just run through a couple, because we'd also need to run through a couple of financial components too, that we would want to make sure, like if, I appreciate what you're thinking about the 4 days too, and how that could be a little bit different, but we just would want to make sure.
So what I'm hearing is the next 2 weeks is out. So what about the week of July 7th?
July
Now,
7th.
until the-
At the time on vacation then.
So Dave and I will get together. Well, no, actually, so
The week of the, what does the week of the 14th,
Yeah.
that would, for all of you
I am
all.
out that entire week. As of it.
I'm only here Monday.
Oh, Abbott is that week, so we also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Abbott,
This is
Abbott.
week of the 21st.
This is why we build in our department a little Tetris calendar of who's here and who's not. July gets a little wild. Okay.
For the
The
week of the 21st.
the 21st.
But we can't do the end of the week because I know we have a full day retreat.
Yes.
we get the 21st, folks. All right.
Has to be the morning of the 21st because I have OSAA.
Okay, what time to what time?
I will, I'm looking at our calendar. I'll move our thing.
Oh, we have ballot then?
Yeah, it's okay.
Could we,
I can-
because we're gonna need also some time for planning and if everyone's kind of gone, so we'll probably need some check-in time for our team. So could we say like, you said you had to be done by.
I need to be in bed by 2. So if I leave here at 11, 12.
what about the 22nd?
Get to bed quicker.
Yeah.
Are you flying
So we did the
today?
At this rate, it might be fun.
I heard Mary Kay say she was thinking if we could get this done in half an hour, so I'm thinking like, what if we plan like 2 hours, 2.5 hours or something like
Well, I
that?
was just trying to propose that we continue working today till 1:30, like,
Yeah,
so.
sorry.
I know. David,
So
David,
That's why.
go ahead and go. I
So
have the
Dave-
calendar.
David-
That's what I'm doing that.
David has to leave by 11 on the 21st.
But if we did 9 to 11,
Yeah, and then we have time to plan beforehand.
and then we can meet at,
Well, let me just throw out like, can we continue after 11 without David for a little bit?
Yes, are you here?
We can do
21st?
the,
Julie, are you here?
Yes,
what about the afternoon of the 24th? Is that better for people?
that's school support.
Oh, school support.
That's kind of.
Or the afternoon of the
What
23rd?
if we do 9 to noon
On the 20
first?
Let's do it.
That
Else
would
we'll send
probably.
out an invite to us.
I'm so sorry. but my-
It's a little extra.
That's okay, we're all gonna talk about how your high maintenance after.
I am hungry. I know, it took me an hour to do my hair,
All right, I think we're gonna stop.
Guys, I think we can, yeah,